Good morning. Welcome to our last module of our class of manual demining technique. In this module, we are going to see some techniques of this process. So, the manual demining technique um, consists of the process of carrying out the technical study or clearance operations through the use of the miners for the manual review of the terrain. So for this process, it's necessary that the use of metal detectors or complete excavation of the trails, and also have to be accompanied when required by the techniques and the tools to vegetation, for you can cut that vegetation. So when we talk about the deployment for the manual demining technique, it's when the leader can deploy his staff to an hazardous area or a confirmed hazardous area in two ways. Here is the first way that he can do it. That is called one man, one path. There is only one deminer simultaneously on a 1 meter work path, and it will be exclusively responsible for it, for this path. A leader may have up to 10 deminers under this method, as long as the minimum safety distance that are defined for the area that is maintained. In this picture, you can see the example of the one man, one path. There is the linear. Here is the example of the linear deployment. What is the the step by step for this? Parallel to the safe zone, the manual clearance process is carried out respecting the safety distance. Also, in this method, the leader is responsible for the task and can deploy the miners to carry out different stages of the process. So you can see in the picture, all of these miners are making different tasks. Um, or it's the different steps to clear the path. Simultaneously, or to allow their progress, all activities must be carried out maximum depth of 1 meter from the security line and carrying out each stage of the clearing sequence. Where the methods um, of the manual clearance technique. The leader will be able to advance the manual clearance under two main methods. What are these two methods? The first is called total excavation, and the second is called detection method. So the first and the second, I'm going to explain these methods in a moment. You have always to take account, or you have to make um, can be the risk or the analysis for the evaluation, for you can determine what is the method that you have to be used. So the leader must determine, um, he have to determine what is the method for intervention, the detection, or the total excavation as established in the normal method of the manual clearance technique of this chapter. So must take into account these steps that I'm going to tell you, or these criteria, for you can take the correct decision. What are those four um, concepts or points? First is the information from the non-technical survey and specific to the area to be determined. The second is the level of knowledge regarding the type of the contamination of the explosive device. The third is the pollution levels in the area. And finally, the magnetic interference factors. So the results will be recorded by the leader responsible for the task in the initial intervention plan. If necessary, the two methods, detection and total excavation, can be considered. So now, here's an image of the total excavation. The use for, or when you have to use this method of total excavation. The use of total excavation will be carried out in areas that make it difficult to use the metal detector. Below are some of the situations that could make difficult to use the detector. So for that reason, the person that is responsible for the task, that can be the leader or the person that is in charge, um, he doesn't have any information about the type of threat that is expected to be found in the area, at least until the first discovery is made and additional analysis can be made. Other criteria is when the metallic contamination of the ground is too high, up to the level at which the deminer can no longer perform a signal or a signal isolation and can ignore the signal that is emitted by the explosive device. When we have a terrain that has a lot of metallic contamination, it's our way for way for use this technique. So mistaking it for a signal that is by emitting by the maybe one coin that you can find or something of metal. The third point for use total excavation is the electromagnetic interference that is identified that may interfere with the detector's operation, and other reason that cast doubt on the detector's proper performance. And final, the risk assessment and available information that indicate that the type of explosive device in the hazardous area or confirmed hazardous area may be free of metallic content. The excavation must be carried out taking the advanced road as the southern line, and it will be carried out um, in these steps. Here we have an example of the total excavation. So the deminer first, he selects what is the necessary equipment that he needs for the excavation and stands behind the advanced road, taking a position that allows him to carry out the procedure without violating the safety measures that we always have to take account for make this process of clearance. Continue. He has to start the removal of the ground from the advanced road until reaching a depth of 13 centimeters and a width of 120 centimeters. This procedure will be repeated as many times as necessary until reaching 50 centimeters to the front. When the deminer reaches the distance, the advanced road must be moved forward and restart with a new excavation. So the advanced road must always remain in the 13 centimeters deep trench. So the earth is removed during the process will be placed in an area that has been already scanned or is completely secure. In that place you can put all of this ground that you, all this earth that you make the excavation. Um, if during the total excavation process the deminer observes the presence of an explosive device or one of its components, he must stop and place the marking cone behind the advanced road in the certain road, and the deminer always have to notify the leader uh, what was the explosive maybe that he found. So the leader can take the decision if his team can be capable of make the destruction of this explosive, or if he has to make the report because he needs uh, other capacity for make the destruction. Um, After this step, the metal detector may be used to sporadically check for the terrain to confirm whether it can be switched to the detection process. In cases maybe where the ground is too hard, you can use water before starting the total excavation. So with this water, it's more easy that you can make the excavation. And now, talking about the method detection, the detection method through the use of metal detectors. The aim is to locate the metal parts that is containing the explosive device, such as detonators, shrapnel containers, among others. So, first, it's the metal detector compensation and testing. This procedure is carried out according to the specification in the manufacturer's manual. The compensation procedure is carried out to compensate the metal detector to the ground where it will be used. And the verification, it is carried out once of the compensation is finished, first with a test piece of the equipment and later in a spotted sample where there will be a metal that resembles the minimum amount of metal that an anti-personnel mine contains, located at deep of minimum at of 13 centimeters. What is the conduct of this technique or this manual demining technique? The enlistment of the warpath and the equipment first of all that you have to use for make the technique. So this equipment, once the leader orders the deminer to start to work, he must carry out the following steps. First, get rid of all metallic and electronic items such as chains, maybe rings, watches, cell phones, and others that you can maybe always use. After you have afterwards pull all your elements for personal protection. And finally, decommission the metal detector according to the manufacturer's manual. Now, what is the readiness of the warpath? The deminer moves to the warpath with a metal detector in search position, as you can see in the second image. So once the deminer reaches the path with the metal detector, he checks the area where he is going to place all his material and the place where he will be placed the marking to delimit the warpath. If during the displacement or the preparation of the warpath, maybe a sign is located, it must be marked and have to be investigated. Something so important for you take account. Next, the deminer delimits both sides of the warpath with stakes of 150 centimeters high with a 15 centimeters of red top, and the path will be a maximum of 1 meter wide. Subsequently, you have to place the advance road behind the 150 centimeters red top stakes, and also tied to each of the stakes that mark the width of the path, one end of the guide ropes. And to finish, you have to place the 50 centimeters high, the 15 centimeters full stake, and this can be placed on the left or on the right side and behind of the advanced road. If necessary, could detain your tape or cord. When you know if it's at right or left, it's according first that you start to work. The leader always is going to tell in what place you have to put that stick. Now, what is the intervention or what is the process for you can make the step by step of the work path of this manual demining technique? First is the visual inspection. In this step, the deminer is located behind the advanced road in front of the work path, where it begins a visual recognition of the terrain. In order to try, or as the objective, try to identify an explosive device or some components on the surface of the terrain or activation mechanisms with wire, stumbling block, because this inspection can be carried out in the position that best allows you to visualize the area. So if the deminer sees any of the elements mentioned above, he must inform to the leader. In this step, you can take off your mask, but always is in this step. After, you have to use the wire or the trip wire of stamping. So it is the leader's responsibility to decide whether or not to carry out this procedure, taking into account the type of vegetation. If so, the following procedures could be applied. So the first is when the deminer takes the position that best allows him behind the base road in front of the assigned path. So gently holding the road looking for wires from the white part, he places himself on the base road and enters approximately 50 centimeters in the path of work without violating the security measures. If no type of contrast is observed on the washer's road, it should be raised slowly until reaching the standing position and pass it over the head of the deminer, who should never lose the side of the wire road. It's for this reason that this must be done. At least you have to make this step at least 3 times, to the left, in central, and in the right area of the path, and vice versa. In the event of observing any contrast in the firing wires or any indication that may suggest the presence of some anti-personnel mine or an explosive device, the deminer should pull the wire search road back and notify the unit leader. Here's the next step, is the removal of vegetation with happen when it's necessary. So if the vegetation prevents proper use of the metal detector, the deminer should perform some steps. What are those steps? First, the deminer is located behind the advanced road in front of the work path, taking the position that allows it to carry out the procedure without violating the safety measures. Second, start cutting the vegetation using garden tools that could be scissors or different size from the top down, every 30 centimeters approximately, from the left to the right or vice versa, until you can guarantee the correct use of the metal detector. So this step must be repeated until a maximum of 50 centimeters of vegetation that is cut in front of the advanced road and 120 centimeters away. In places where there are rocks or structures, plants with stems greater than 10 centimeters in diameter, or any other type of element that prevents the cut of the vegetation, this should not be moved by the deminer as far as possible. The surrounding vegetation will be cut. So good vegetable waste or all of this vegetation that you remove is transported to some areas that are designed for you can put these elements or locations that are alternate in the safe areas that you checked before. In case that the surface of the soil is covered with layers of leaves, the deminer can gently remove them until it uncovers the surface of the soil. Something that you have to take account in this process is that only when a new pad is start will the 50 centimeters vegetation could proceed by carry out. So otherwise, only the 30 centimeters will be cut. This measurement corresponds to the advance. The next step is the detection. In what consists this step? The detection, the deminer initiates the detection half the search, hid approximately behind the advance road, and additionally, it must include overlaps forward and to the sides of the path, performing at least two inspections and advising half the search hit. The detection must be made as close to the ground as possible, avoiding that the search hit touches maybe the ground surface. In cases where one or more signals can exist during this detection process, the deminer must first complete the detection sequences over the entire area and perform the signal installation and marking. Also, in the same way, if there is no signal, proceed to move the advanced road and start the sequence again. Depending on the type of detector, the search sequence will be carried out. So the MineLab detector, you will need to repeat the process described for the detection 4 times, which is equivalent to approximately 40 centimeters to the front. In the first picture, you can see the example of the detection of MineLab detector. And when you use the balloon detector, you will need to repeat the process that is described 3 times, which is equivalent more or less to approximately 45 centimeters to the front. In the second image, we can see the example of the detection with using a balloon detector. Where is the marking of progress or the marking of advance? As the deminers advance along the warpath, they must clearly delimit the safe area that has not been intervened. For this, they will vary 50 centimeters high sticks. They're paint red, so these stakes will be placed every meter, and this distance can be increased or reduced depending of the terrain conditions. So the maximum depth that a clearance path may have is 5 meters into the area, at which time a new one must be started. So in order to obtain a path of 2 meters wide, as a safety measure, it's necessary because we have to guarantee the mobility on the medical evacuation road. What is this isolation and signals investigation? When we talk about this isolation, if during the process, the detection process, a signal or different signals are identified, one close to the other, or equal or maybe lower intensity, the deminer with his metal detector equipment, he must establish the perimeter of the signal. For he can delimit this perimeter, he can use some markers, and he can bring the search heat of the metal detector toward the signal until emits the first indication that could be vibratory with luminous or auditory, and marks with maybe the aerosol or with isolation markers where it gives the indication of the beginning of the signal. This exercise should be done in different directions until you can really establish what is the real perimeter of the sign. When, in case that you identify one or more signals of the front and or side overlap, completely isolation of the signal, it will be carried out as far as possible. Otherwise, an isolator or an aerosol mark line will be placed to fix the beginning of the signal, and these signs will be investigated in the next advance or on the next lane. When identifying different signals that maybe one is close to the other or equal, the deminer should, if it's possible, first isolate the signals that are close to and the advanced route, and so until isolation of all the signal is complete. If the isolation maybe is not achieved, you can make a multiple marking as shown is the image that is below, that I'm going to show you like this. In this image you can see, or this is an example that are marking the what is the correct example for marking multiple signals. So the deminer will be able to confirm the perimeter of the signs as many times as he deems that or he considers that is appropriate, and if it's necessary he will be able to isolate them again. So if the advanced road, um, maybe you find an obstacle to the procedure when the isolating the signal, the deminer may use 250 centimeters red stakes, and or you can use this as a reference and remove to the advanced road. Once the isolation of the sign is finished, the deminer should mark the starting line of the excavation and placing an insulator or an aerosol mark line at a minimum distance of 15 centimeters behind the isolating sign. If during maybe this process some type of metal is identified on the surface of the ground, the deminer can remove it, verifying always that there is not a type of maybe a danger, and the area must be reviewed again through the detection process. When we talk about this investigation of signals, it's when the deminer selects the necessary equipment and stands behind the advanced rod in front of the signal. So here, he taking the position um, in front of the signal, um, with the position allows to him for he can carry out the procedure without compromising the safety measure that he always has to take account. If it's necessary, he may remove the advance road. Once the miners take the position, begins the excavation, where the first isolator that demarcates their starting line is located, and at minimum depth of 13 centimeters with 15 centimeters. It's removing the layers of soil from left to right or vice versa. So this step will be repeated until you establish a type of a wall to the direction of the signal, trying to reach um, from the front or from the side, but never from the top. If the soil is hard, you can use some water to soften maybe the ground before and during the excavation. When starting the excavation, where the signal isolation is, the layers of the soil are removed. You should be verified with the metal detector to confirm if the signal was removed or soil removed during the process. There is prior markings may be placed in a safe area behind the advanced road or may be removed from the site, and if the deminer determines is appropriate. If at the end of the excavation it was not possible to locate the source of the signal, but when verifying with the metal detector the signal continues, so go back 15 centimeters and restart a new excavation under the same procedure. When twice the depth is reached and the source of the signal is not located, addition may be carried out. So following, you have to always following the parameters that are established in the book number 8. There is for disposal of explosive device in order to distort the possible presence of explosive artifact. So this part of this procedure is according or is the decision of the leader. So here you can see an example of for the miners how they make the excavation and put the sign. If during the excavation the presence of an explosive device or a cable, wire, or fuse was determined, the deminer must stop the excavation activities and place the cone behind starting in the last image, and the image that is in the middle you can see how he put the cone, and he put that cone behind the starting line for the excavation and in the center of the same. For no reason should the cone remain within the excavation and notify to the unit leader. At the end of the signal investigation procedure, the deminer must move the advance road to the front and approximately 30 centimeters in case of finding objects that cannot be removed on the path, like stone, trees, and among others. And it will be evaluated if you reduce or extend the distance of 30 centimeters of advance a little more. So in the first image, it's like the example of the investigation of science. That is the first step. The second image that you can see is the example of the science investigation, the step 2. And here it's the example of the investigation of steps 3. So once the investigation of the signal is concluded and the presence of an explosive artifact is confirmed, The extrusion will be carried out according to the book number 8 or the EOD. That is our subject that you are going to see. Um, After, you have to make a qualify control. For this qualify control or this internal quality control, the leader responsible for the task or the supervisor must verify the completion of the internal quality control on 100% of the land was cleared of the day before the end of the work day when possible, and maximum before starting the next work day job. The manual technique or the metal detector for quality control. The metal detector, they must be used, and the use of maybe could use a canine. So for use this, you have to take account some criteria. First, the assignment of a deminer, a different deminer from the one working in the area to be inspected. For the deployment of the deminer, it will be carried out of following the procedure established in this manual, the manual mining technique, in order to conduct this correct technique, and that could be detection or marking excavation. And the rest of the terrain will be demarcated with two green top 50 centimeters of stakes, which will replace the blue top stakes. So this function will be carried out by the leader responsible for the task. Um, in some cases that in which during the quality control of explosive artifacts are identified in any of the techniques, the activities of the unit must be suspended. This will be classified as critical not conformity. So the leader must coordinate with operations officer and the action to be taken. Follow regarding the explosive artifacts, um, um, like destruction or marking. Also, likewise, Descontamina Colombia must be informed of all the suspicion of the operation and take action. The leader of the manual demining technique is responsible for the task, have to be recorded in the quality control. In what part you can look for this document in the Annex B of this three book. There is a manual demining technique. For when you use a canning demining technique, it will be carried out. You have to look for the approved operational process number 4. This was the final of our chapter. With this, we finish with our class. So if you have maybe any question, you can ask me, or you can talk with any of the instructors of this course. All of them are so prepared for maybe they can solve the question that maybe you have. Thank you so much and have a good day.